family. How are you? So, that little piece of music was Bruce Purse Conversation from the Piano Spa. Piano Spa on YouTube. So, please, when you get a chance, that relaxing, meditative, puts you in a good, relaxed mood so we can talk about, have our rising soar session. Put us in the mind. So, family, we're trying something new this evening, so please bear with me. I'm just gonna be with everyone out there. We got something we're gonna talk about. I love when I get, excuse me, sinus going on tonight. I love when I get requests from um, the community and from people to have a discussion about a specific topic. That's very good. So we're gonna talk about tonight. Um, Basically the relationship. I call it let's stay together, family. Let's stay together. And I have the sisters who are talking about being in relationships and men and different things. This is not a battle of the sexes conversation, family. I don't believe in the breaking within the sexes. I don't believe that that's a thing in our African community. I think African men and women have always been in harmony to our necessity and our needs. So we're going to talk about a little bit about the relationship, the man and the woman, and how that works out in our community for our greatest good. Because I know that we subscribe to a lot of behaviors and ways of being that are not supportive of African centered consciousness. So, and that also affects our relationships and how we court, right? How we meet, how we court, how we engage one another with just the basic building of the relationship. Well, in order to build strong nation building, you have to build strong families. So family want to build strong African families. So the big question is always about the men. Uh, Excuse me. And I actually see brothers out here. So quite a few good brothers on my timeline that, they be going through it with the sisters out here in these streets. And I don't understand why, because some of these brothers are such beautiful brothers. But the weirdest thing is so oftentimes the beautiful brother or the beautiful sister does not necessarily come and connect with that mate for themselves. And there's some things we want to we want to deconstruct in our consciousness in terms of how we're interacting with the matrix. For one, what is manhood? Right? For the African community, manhood, womanhood is something very different than we have been enculturated to believe. Because remember, we're still trying to assimilate in a society that is, by virtue of quality of life, by virtue of the African's ability for self-efficacy, we are living in a hostile living environment. So we have to consider the fact that we are not necessarily behaving, thinking, and performing activities that are in support of our greatest good or our quality of life. So some of those things have to do with manhood. In our African cultural context, within our village context and our community context, separate and apart from what we know and understand as engagement with quote unquote foreigners, foreign people, in African context, there was a process of development that occurred with you from the village. Because in the village, in our tribe and in our community, every person needs to make a contribution. And we don't need people being broken in our community. It's not helpful to us as a community. So there is a developmental process that trains you on how to become a man. See, we live in this false society and we have a whole bunch of different things. And women, this is important. I'm not a man, so I'm not telling you about a man. I'm a learning and development professional. I deal with organizational change, mind change, systemic change. And I believe that that's the Africa's greatest challenge with our strive for self-efficacy and sovereignty living in this society and how we grow forward in our community. So there is a big to do with African manhood, what we as women interpret as manhood, what's practical and actionable in our living experience. And then also we're still diabolically mind twisted by looking at television, right? Media, and also looking at the tale of two Americas, because there is a white type of manhood, whiteness, white cultural experience. Remember, whiteness became mechanized. When whiteness became mechanized, it also became cultural. There are things that go into the culture of white-centered consciousness, like behavior, rules of engagement, consciousness, raising families and intention and community goals. These things are a part of the cultural experience of whiteness. African people, we have been given Black culture, but Black culture, it also sits apart to white culture and white consciousness. And we've unfortunately taken that on, like, rap and all of those things are great. And, music and dance, and those are all the things that are a part of our community culture, but they have been misplaced in our psyche as the anchors of our community. So they have affected how we look at manhood, relationships, connection, courtship, nation building. Big factor. So family, thank you all for coming in. Please share the link. We're going to talk about the whole let's stay together, family, building strong African families, man and woman, with not a battle of the sexes. We're making an assessment as to how we can implement strong family structure so that we can begin strong families, build strong nations, build sovereignty for the African. Sovereignty, community is the insulator that keeps us safe, right? Because right now we're very vulnerable because we're fragmented, and that's also intentional. And this fragmented consciousness and cultural experience as Black culture, what we've been given as Black culture, is not necessarily our culture. They're fragments and aspects of us that are a part of that scene, and they're a part of that scene because we've been subpart and subordinate inside of what we believe is African-centered culture, which is actually an adaptation of circumstances and making the most of our experiences, which isn't the greatest good of the African. And it has affected our family. So family, please drop your comments. Please drop your comments. Please share the link. Please join the conversation. These Rising Soar sessions are intentional. They are intentional. The subject matter are intentional around building strong African consciousness, making it immediately applicable, not just information, not for information purposes only. This is for action purposes only. Rising Source sessions are for action, immediately actions. Put it into play. Allow it to change how we think and behave. A lot of us, we read a lot of books, we hear a lot of speeches, we listen to a lot of commentary. And right now, because of this COVID situation, everybody has a mic and everybody is saying a lot of stuff. And everybody, sometimes the way we see the matrix, no one can show you the matrix. Everyone has to see it for themselves. So I'm saying to you, African, the way that we have been interacting with our society has not necessarily been in support of African-centered families, structure, power, strength, the sovereignty of our community. So there's a whole lot of things in here. There is the women's lib and feminism. And let me tell you something, African, a Black woman and an African man has not had problems with their, right? There are pockets and spaces within our cultural experience that are tribal and small communal type things that may be of disagreement. And within time, without being obstructed, would have been addressed eventually, because that's the nature of necessity. Things will eventually change. Right now, we can't really say how things have changed, if they would have changed, or otherwise, simply because they've been impacted, and we had no say in how they were impacted, and we don't know what the ramifications were going to be, but we're living the symptoms. And they've also affected our families and our relationships and how men and women connect and court. So that's what we're talking about tonight. We're talking about the courtship, manhood, men and women relationships, how they build strong, powerful African-centered relationships, and how we address our consciousness in terms of how we're interacting with the matrix. Because this is the tale of two Americas. We also got to remember something, that our African men are falling underneath a concept of manhood that is built on white-centered consciousness and white-centered theory. So there are certain things that there are fundamental baselines of things that we all want to ideally, it's a cute conversation that everybody can just participate, but we really understand as African people, that's not really true. And a lot of what we do is assimilate. To to the circumstances under the guise that we're going to change our environment, when we actually are not going to change our environment, because a great deal of the behaviors that we have are contrary to African centeredness, African consciousness. And if that's the case, then it will not lead us on the trajectory to creating sovereign nations of African people. So that's the whole, no one can show you the matrix. You got to see it for yourself. I can tell you this. There are many pockets of information. There's something called the Mentasad, Dr. Malemu Baruti. You guys want to get that book right there. Get that book. Malemu Baruti, guys. Get that. Mentasad. Mentasad, mental. Aside, meaning the death of. Mentasad, the death of your mind. So, and we have other scholars. We have Amos Wilson, a Black psychologist. We have Dr. Francis Cress Welsing. We have Carter G. Woodson. We have so many different books. We have oh gosh, excuse me. We have so many different texts that can lend to our consciousness, so we understand our situation. The reason why we want to understand it is so that we devise solutions to answer our circumstances. That's why we want to know. We want to know why. We want to know how we deal with how we have better structured relationships. We want to know how we change our communication. We want to know how we fold into one another, and how we build up strong, powerful bonds in our relationships. Now, manhood. Let's talk about manhood. Now, we touched on it a little bit around, in a cultural context, everyone needs to be strengthened. So there is a process of evolution, of development. In African-centered consciousness, men raise men. There's a rites of passage that teaches you how to be responsible, how to feed your family, how to stand upright. There's a process of learning, actionable learning within your community, of the elders in your community that are going to raise you up with a strong back as a man and as a woman, so that you know what your duties and commitments are to your community. So we have Black men that are coming up in our society, who are growing up and physically growing up, who are experiencing temptations and allure in different spaces and places, but somehow stunted in his ability, unless he concedes his manhood in some other way, unless he trades off and compromises in another way, is incapable of producing these environments. I meet brothers, and I mean to tell you, I meet some Black men. I worked at a couple of places where I saw Black women attack Black men. We have become so insane in our behavior, in our consciousness, that we are a detriment to one another. And these are learned individuals in places of authority, simply because he's an alpha male, toxic masculinity. You can't talk to any man the way you choose to address a man. An African man has his chemical. He has his chemicals. And right now we're not talking about that, but we will discuss the difference in a man and his chemical. He's chemically a man. He's dealing with emotional man. But right now we're moving into a space where we can create an action and actionable journey to strong bonded relationships. We're dealing with the man's chemicals. He's dealing with growing, and he's dealing with strength, bravado, and he's dealing with peer pressure. And we're pushing our people, and our men particularly, into spaces that are dysfunctional under the guise of manhood. And some of our brothers, if they fail to be able to achieve some of what the women believe is manhood, it causes them to have certain emotional breakdowns. The great deal of our community, we have severe mental health issues, and because we are functional, peace and blessings, Sister Lotus. Thank you so much. Because we are functional. Okay, sis. Listen, I got it all. I got the forget it. I have the diffuser going, the air purifier. I go through the whole sinuses every now and again. It's just a thing. I don't know. I've been dealing with it for so many years. It's like not even here. So I'm just like moving right along. Right, family? So we want to look at how we structure relationships. What is that courtship? What is that bond about? We went through a whole psychological attack, warfare attack on, all the single ladies, and we don't want no scrubs. And you know something? We live in a society that creates scrubs in our community, right? We look at Jawanza Kunjufu conspiracy to destroy black boys. And we have a conspiracy to destroy black boys who will one day become men. Clearly, they're going to become men who are going to be not functional within the society because 1 out of 3 African men will have an interaction with the police, right? We're looking at also that these statistics are in the book Menticide as well, but you can also look at Michelle Alexander, The New Jim Crow. You want to get this metric so that you can catalog this information. Right? You want to catalog this information because these are the things that are going to add to your strategy as to how, thank you, beloved, as to how, listen, y'all got to get into this, and I write all up and through my books, forget it. It's just because I'm just like an active reader. I got notes all over the place, all through the book. It's just, baby. But get your own copy of The New Jim Crow. Give thanks, family. And we want to consider what goes into how we are building relationships and how we can bond, because we have sisters out here that want to be in relationships. We have brothers, some really good brothers that want to be in relationships. Have we worked through the consciousness? The first thing when you're building a strong African-centered consciousness in this society is one, to understand that there is a tale of two Americas. That's your first conversation. Your first conversation has to be what you're creating is going to be a necessity for what you as an African need. And we are living in, give thanks, sis. I appreciate you. What? I scribble all over my book, sis. You can't even begin to see my book because let me tell you, I got nothing but notes all up and through them. I write across my pages because I ingest information. I take in information and once I take it and I process it. It processes. She said, I see. Says I take in information and I process information because I need to put it on because we need to create solutions. I don't have this morbid, some people have this allure to the drama and the I don't need to hear it because I know sometimes I peep and I see it, but at the end of the day, we need solutions for our family. We need to create strong bonded relationships. We need to understand that men are different from women. We need to understand that in this time, we need to create. We are going to have to create. We keep saying, some people keep telling us, and our elders oftentimes tell us, and I understand why they're saying it, but let me translate that. They say, go back and get it. Yes, Sankofa, go back and get it, put it on and move forward. Right? So understand what worked back then. And what worked back then was we raised men. We had rites of passage. Right now, I generally work with the adults. Right. I work with the adults. There's other groups of people, my sisters, different ones, my sister Umi, we got sister, Mama Ajuo, we got the Uhuru Academy, we have Brother Mark Klein. We have different groups. We have Little Sun people that work with the children. I work with the adults simply because we cannot have the children fortified and send them out into the world where the adults are still dysfunctional, making decisions that impact the children. Because we just undid our work. There is a consciousness. Someone says, like, oh, I wish I could think of the author. Better that we raise strong. It's easier to, Dr. Umar said this. It's easier to raise strong boys than to have to heal broken men. Right. So I get you. We don't really want to have to fix broken men, but at this point, men are the ones and women are the ones who are in our space making decisions for the children. The children are not yet able to make decisions for themselves. So while we're fortifying our children and there's a space over there for those who can fortify the children, I will be over here programming and reworking with the African-centered Pan-African transformational consciousness to help you defragment and begin to restructure your muscle so that you are no longer a detriment to our community. African women and African men. Women and men, we have a need in our community today. So we need to be able to be, we can't go back to the old way. In this moment, we need the strategies. We need strategies that help us moving forward. And I also watched some of the the Polynesian indigenous, and the men actually cooked the food. They went, got the food, and cooked the food in honor of the family. So in some cultures, oh, women's supposed to be in the kitchen. That's not necessarily true. African women were in the kitchen during slavery times because that's where the slave master put the African women, in the kitchen or in the field picking cotton. But in the tribe, sometimes the African woman led the war. She was the warrior. Sometimes the African woman did the hunting because it was what was necessary in the tribe. We did what we needed to do for our survival and for our well-being. So we got to get out of being twisted in this concept. African woman, if the matrix gives you leverage in the matrix, then you just get what you get. You go home and you build it up with the African man. Y'all are still partnership. Y'all are still all in, not 50-50. You're 100%, he's 100%. You go in, you build it up. You got more 100%, not 50-50. That's a misconception, some more deceptive foolishness. You go in with all of your best of your best. He goes in with all of his best of his best, and you build from there. Oh, I got this, something is wrong with me, whatever. Yeah, if he loved me, he'll deal with me. Lies. Nobody has to deal with your foolishness while you are impeding on someone else's quality of life. African. But we also get to understand that we're all surviving and we have varying symptoms that come out of the matrix as a result of being unwell as a community of people. And I need for us to really understand that the great majority of us are unwell. I don't care how many accolades, education, how many, whatever they hung on you, all of those things would have put you to sleep. But as an African, we are unwell because we behave in ways that do not support nation building. We do not behave in ways that increase our quality of life. We behave in ways oftentimes that are detrimental to one another. And what that means is that we are unwell. Okay, family? So we want to build up. And we're going to look at our relationships. We're going to look at our bonding. Men are men. And I'm not saying be out here stroking egos and doing all of these things, because men look at women, and sometimes the reason that they're having the rifts is because men are trying to put women into a bottle that white center consciousness put the African woman. Just like sometimes African women are trying to look at African men and put African men into a bottle that white center consciousness created. There is a great deception. We are living in the tale of two Americas and our global experience as a whole. There are distinct differences in African people's quality, in their essential energy, in the way that we behave, emote, think, and process information. There's many things that are greatly different about us, and we need to address them. We really want to be connected to that. So when we're meeting partners and we're meeting men, and sometimes, listen, we got varying symptoms. So, I tell women oftentimes, they say, in this matrix, they say, oh, the woman is supposed to wait for the man to step to her or what have you, because that's ladylike. If there's a conversation that you have acknowledged, because something, African women, you have intuition. You have something that comes out of the divine center in terms of the rhythm, and you are connected with a frequency. So if something in your spirit guides you to a particular person, you might want to make your bid. You might want to say, hey, well, this is the deal, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is not Cinderella. This is not a white horse and a prince. This is none of that foolishness, because that doesn't apply to you. Mind your African business. Those things are fairy tales. And there are white women that can believe in that. And you know what? Their life experience support that narrative. Your life experience with one out of three African men having a police interaction or having done time within the penal system, that riding in on a horse is not your narrative. It's just not your narrative. And you can stop contortioning yourself to believe that it is. Not that there aren't brothers out here who are doing great things. Okay, not that there's not. There are brothers out here there are brothers that are out here doing great things, and there are brothers out here who are extremely intelligent, right? But the goal here is to have an African that is consciously aware of his African-centered consciousness. And a lot of times we as African people, because we are trying to assimilate our worthiness within the matrix, we're making decisions that are not on par, taking us on the trajectory of African-centered consciousness or African sovereignty. So that's going to affect how we build relationships. And it's going to affect the depth and the bond in our relationship. In African-centered consciousness, there is no power differential because no one can one-up another one, because we're both supposed to be moving in the same direction for the same purpose. So this is not about ego. This is not me needing to kiss your butt and stroke your ego, or you needing to kiss. That's a power differential. And that is a conversation that's built on someone here has a deficit. That means that we're not coming in at 100%. And we really want to be able to catalog our deficits. We want to know where our dysfunction is, which is why your fundamental conversation and engaging is not how we going to go together and have kids and build a house. None of that should occur before you come to the real consciousness between the two of you that you're living inside of the tale of two Americas. And then you know that your decision making is going to be different from the fairy tales that we've been provided. So family, I'm thanking you guys for coming in. We're still building out every time. Rising Source sessions, trying this something new here. We're doing it to fortify the African family. We want to build strong relationships, strong families. Strong families build strong nations. Strong nations lead us to African sovereignty. African sovereignty is the foundation of uninterrupted, unabridged self-determination, self-governance of your resources, land, and people. The ability to get up from the table if you choose to. In this moment, we are so vulnerable that we are forced to contortion ourselves to sit at these tables, although we really don't have to. Because if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, family, go together. We can go much farther if we go together. Africa is the richest continent on the planet. We are the most vibrant people who have been here since the beginning of time. Family, it's on us to do the work. So let's build strong families. Let's stay together. Let's stay together. Peace and blessings, family. And listen, you guys, stay connected. www.keystosoar.com. Get on that mailing list, family. And also, you have a Feel Me project. You have a meditative journey to help you with your awakening. It's a cleansing sound therapy at www.keystosoar.com/Feel Me EP. Because you know something? Feel me. That's how we heal, and that's how we grow and know together. So peace and blessings. Great rising, family. And I'm signing off. Keep it tight, and thank you for those who have come in tonight. Peace.